Last week I was watching a YouTube video and I came across a term that I was unfamiliar with associated with electric vehicles. So, as is my habit, I tried to track down what the meaning of the term was. And in doing so, I came across a document that's publicly available on the internet from the federal government agency called the GSA, or the General Service Administration, which is covering the federal government's plan to fulfill President Biden's direction to electrify the federal fleet. It's a very large endeavor. The General Service Administration provides guidance and processes for the different branches of the federal government to fulfill requirements. And what this document does is it outlines what the federal government is planning to do in order to fulfill President Biden's direction. It's very interesting. There's things in here about the federal government. Then there's also general electric vehicle trends that are being discussed. And let me just go through this real quick. Here is just talking about which departments tend to be trending better than others, and they're doing some call-outs there. Reasons for electrification. If you look at adoption for companies that have fleets of vehicles trending towards electrification, it's pretty significant. The United States Postal Service obviously is a part of the federal government. They're doing it. Federal Express is doing it. United Postal Services is doing it. Amazon is doing it. Walmart Deliveries is doing it. And the reason they're doing it, in my personal opinion, is not really because of social, the benefits of society for lower emissions. I think they're doing it because the total cost of ownership for fleet vehicles goes down when you electrify them because of the decreased maintenance cost and the predictable fuel costs. It makes it easier to plan budgets when unexpected repairs don't crop up as frequently, and there's no fluctuation in fuel cost. Anyway, so although President Biden, he's a good guy, his heart is in the right place, I also think there's a strong economic benefit for electrification. And here's the direction President Biden gave that they're trying to fulfill, and there's laws associated with them. And this was put out in 2020, so it's a little bit dated as far as what are available. There's plug-in. This acronym means plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. BEV is battery electric vehicle. These are the ones that are pure electric. Then there's also the plug-in hybrid is the kind that actually has an internal combustion engine also. So that's not pure electric, but it is included in the fulfillment of the direction that President Biden gave. So you can go either way, but they don't have the new line of other electric vehicles that just came out in the past year or two on this list. They do have the Mach-E though, which is kind of interesting, but you'll notice they don't have the Hyundai Ioniq 5. And apparently in heavy-duty vehicles, there's also options that were available in 2020. I understand heavy vehicle manufacturers are embracing electrification from requests from customers, so there's more of these coming out. But 250 miles for a bus is pretty darn good. And I'm not quite sure what the federal government is going to be using shuttle buses for, but there's quite a few of those on here, so they must have some kind of need for it. So here's where they go over the concepts of how to charge level 1, level 2 DC fast. And so if you have a fleet, you need to arrange for that fleet to be recharged when not in use. So you need to not only purchase the vehicle, but you also need to get your infrastructure in place. Here are manufacturers of electric vehicle charging equipment that the General Service Administration has permitted to sell to federal government departments. There's also another one. They're local here in North Carolina called Atom Power, and they were on a subsequent list that I came across. And they make a electric vehicle charging equipment that's just a metal post and a cable and a J1772 plug. It's just three things. That's all it is. Very simple. Nothing outside that is exposed to the elements. Just a metal post that you bolt to the ground, a thick cable, and a J1772 plug. And what they do is they take all the electronics, they move it all the way back to the breaker panel. And on the breaker panel, they have the electronics in order to provide the electrification and also the telemetry needed in order to monitor the recharging statistics for the fleets. Those only work in places where you don't need to charge people for plugging in their electric vehicle. And they call that a captive fleet. Anywhere where there's like a fence where you park your vehicles at night, the Atom Power solution works pretty good. And they are on the federally approved list. So here's what you could expect on how long it takes to recharge a electric vehicle. And this is being presented to people who make purchasing decisions for fleets within the federal government. And so if they're new to the concept of electric vehicles, this kind of gives them a guideline of which cars may or may not be fitting to their needs. I guess they have a plan of action in order to follow, and how much, new vehicle purchases will be electrified, I think is a individual decision for the purchasers. Trying to obtain compliance with President Biden's direction. So here's where they go over the actual market, which is kind of interesting. This company down here, Bentley Energy Consulting, provides this information. And these are sales through 2018 through 2021. And some of this, I believe, is projected. So anyway, I think it was put out in late 2020 the first quarter of 2021. Talks about adoption rates in different areas of the world. This is pretty well-known information. So if you're not aware, this is a great diagram of how strongly Tesla dominates the market. Now, they've slipped a little bit, but they're still well over the half mark for EVs sold in the United States and around the entire world. The single company Tesla owns just a vast majority of the electric vehicle market. I guess when this was put out, 79% of all battery electric vehicle sales. I'm not going into the weeds with what the federal government has in their fleet inventory. These are models that they're recommending for the different areas. You'll notice there's really no minivans. That's slowly starting to change here in 2023. Electric and the concept of minivan is a little bit passé. Now it's really a crossover or an SUV, like the Rivian RS1, the Volvo EX90. Those are all available as fully electric options. This is where they go into the charging infrastructure necessary. And I like this graph because it's just, someone obviously just grabbed it off Charge Point. It doesn't mean a lot. And they're talking about charging at home and charging at work, charging around town. I don't know what the federal government purchasing agent is going to be doing with this slide, but I guess it takes care of 3 minutes of talking points. And here's the charging pie chart for DC fast charging in the United States. Again, Tesla dominates. Additional DC fast charging networks that are coming online. The General Motors partnership with EVgo is going to be the Ultium Charge 360 network. Ford is partnering with Green Lots. Tesla has their own. And then everyone else is basically just giving credits to their vehicle purchasers for free charging at Electrify America. And that's basically building out the Electrify America network because they're pumping cash into it. Cost parity is a great concept. This is when the battery electric vehicles will end up costing the same as a comparable internal combustion engine car. So, for instance, a family sedan that is made with an internal combustion engine versus a family sedan that's made with a battery electric powertrain. Cost parity is when those two cost the same. And right now, battery electric is higher because lithium-ion battery cost is higher. But at some point, they're going to be equal. And then later, the battery electric will cost less. Now, there's also the additional benefit of battery electric vehicle ownership with what they call total cost of ownership, where you don't pay maintenance cost on it. There's no oil changes. There's fewer breakdowns. And basically, you just rotate the tires and fill the windshield washer fluid every 6,000 miles. Rotate the tires, things like that. There's not a lot of breakdowns. So it ends up costing less to own a battery electric vehicle. And at some point, the purchase price will also be equal and then further dropping. Here's the slide. So this is price parity, and they're anticipating late 2023, early 2024 for there to be price parity, after which battery electric vehicles will cost less than their comparable internal combustion engine comparable car. Now, if you cost less, my personal opinion that the American public is very practical. If you have a car that costs less and is more reliable, there's going to be a lot of people making the decision that they want an electric vehicle. Now, the federal government alone's purchasing power is going to greatly advance the electric vehicle market. With the federal government purchasing all these electric vehicles, all the manufacturers are going to be churning out electric vehicles for the federal government, plus the demand. So, wow, if I was Tesla and I owned more than half of the EV market, and looking at these numbers, they are just really in a terrific position in order to just massacre the financials for the foreseeable future. And that's why I think you see all these other OEM manufacturers like GM, Ford, and Volkswagen quickly trying to become proficient in manufacturing electric vehicles too. Okay, so they want to have chargers. They want to have new purchasing of new vehicles be electric. For the federal, state, tribal, postal, and local fleets. I'm not quite sure what all that means, but I guess that's what the federal government has purchasing decision over. And this is kind of interesting talking points towards the end here, where they're talking about crushing Norway. If you're not aware, Norway has a very high adoption rate of electric vehicles. It's something like 80%. So that's where they're talking about crushing Norway, and I don't know what the answer is. I guess they're just opening up the floor to conversation. Oh, here's GM's electrification strategy, and Lordstown, Ohio. This plant right here is where the batteries are going to be churned out. They also have additional facilities coming online past here, where additional vehicles are being produced. Cadillac Lyriq is being produced in Spring Hill, Tennessee. Chevrolet Silverado is being produced in Michigan. $27 billion. I've actually heard additional investment in a lithium-ion mining venture in Nevada by General Motors also. So they're definitely heavily committed. If their EV plan does not pan out, General Motors is going to go belly up because they're way overextended into the electric vehicle manufacturing plan. So they are heavily invested. Ford too is working on it, and from what I understand, the Lincoln brand is going to be fully electrified by 2030, from what I understand. So in 2030, you won't be able to buy an internal combustion engine Lincoln anymore. And then all the other brands that Ford covers will also have electric vehicles as a large portion of the models that are being offered. Tesla doesn't have an electrification strategy because they're all electric all the time, 100%. I'm not quite sure what they're referring to here. So Volkswagen has come heavily into electrification. There's the ID4, there's the ID3, ID7 is going to be soon coming out in the North American market. Hyundai. This was the term I was actually looking up that Google got a hit on. Is the eGMP. I didn't know what that term meant, so I looked it up, and it turns out to be a Hyundai standard. Honda and Toyota are definitely lagging behind. So these two need some work to do. And that's it. I thought it was very interesting. I'll put a link to this in the notes of this video. But I just want to take a moment to share because it was very insightful into the direction the federal government is going, and also some general trends in the electric vehicle market.